Look, living on a small income is stressful. There's just no way around it. But here's the thing. It's a challenge you can absolutely manage with the right game plan. So let's dive into this guide on how to make ends meet and build a system that works, even when things are tight. You ever get that feeling that no matter what you do, your paycheck just doesn't seem to stretch as far as it used to? Well, you're definitely not alone in feeling that pressure. It can be exhausting and frankly a little scary. But just recognizing that feeling, that's the first step toward taking back control. And the great news is there are real, practical ways to handle this. And look, this isn't about some kind of financial magic trick. It's really just about a clear, totally judgment-free approach to stretching what you have and finding a little breathing room. So let's get right into the how. Okay, so first things first. Before we can change anything, we got to know what we're working with. The foundation of any kind of financial control is just being aware. I mean, you can't fix a leak if you don't even know where it's coming from, right? So our first mission is to become a detective of our own spending. So the source material breaks this down into a really simple four-step process. First, you analyze where your money is actually going. Then, you choose where you can realistically make some cuts. After that, you create an actual budget to follow. And finally, we're going to talk about a really powerful mind hack, using cash. Let's break that down. All right, so for that first analyze step, the key is to get super specific. So go ahead, grab your last couple of bank or credit card statements and start putting every single purchase into a category. You've got your fixed costs like rent, sure, but what about the rest? How much are you really spending on groceries or gas or grabbing a coffee? The numbers might actually surprise you, but that's a good thing. That's data you can use. Okay, let's talk about that last step, considering cash. The psychology here is pretty amazing. You know, when you swipe a card, it almost feels like monopoly money, doesn't it? It's kind of abstract. But when you have to hand over physical cash, that spending feels way more real. Trying a cash envelope system for things like groceries or entertainment can make your budget feel tangible and honestly make it a lot easier to stick to. All right, so once you've got that budget figured out, now comes the fun part, finding savings. And listen, we're not talking about making these huge, painful sacrifices here. We're talking about small, smart changes in your day-to-day life that can add up to some really big savings over time. Okay, let's tackle food, because for most of us, it's one of the biggest places our money goes. So what if I told you that you could eat well on just $4 a day? Sounds impossible, right? Well, a food studies scholar named Leanne Brown actually created an entire cookbook called Good and Cheap to prove it's totally possible. It's an amazing reminder that a small food budget doesn't have to mean bad food. So how in the world do you even get close to that $4 number? Well, it's all about being smart with your strategy. Cooking at home is just massively cheaper than eating out. Building your meals around awesome cheap staples like rice, beans, and lentils is a game changer. And planning your meals around what's on sale instead of just buying what you feel like can slash your grocery bill. And here's another great tip for the grocery store. For stuff you know you're always going to use, things that don't spoil, buying in bulk is almost always a win. We're talking things like pasta, toilet paper, canned goods. Yeah, the price tag might look bigger at first, but the secret is to look at that tiny little cost per unit number on the shelf. That number tells you how much you're really paying, and it's almost always lower for the bulk size. This really breaks it down and makes it super simple. You want to buy stuff like dry goods and household supplies in bulk, but for things that go bad fast, like fresh veggies or milk, you should probably stick to smaller amounts unless you have a solid plan to use them or freeze them right away. Doing this stops you from wasting food, which, let's be honest, is literally like throwing your money in the garbage. And hey, a tight budget absolutely does not mean you have to have a boring life. Seriously, your local library is a total goldmine. We're talking free books, movies, everything. Most towns have free events, especially in the summer, like concerts in the park. And just going for a walk or having a picnic in a nice public space costs you nothing. The goal here is to cut your expenses, not your happiness. Okay, so we've covered the daily stuff. Now it's time to zoom out and go after the big ones, those huge monthly bills that take the biggest bite out of your paycheck. Even cutting these by a little bit can free up a whole lot of cash. Housing. For pretty much everyone, this is the big one, the number one expense. So you really have to ask yourself, is there any way to spend less here? Maybe that means looking for a cheaper apartment when your lease is up. Or, if you're open to a more minimalist lifestyle, things like micro apartments are becoming a real option for saving a ton of money.
Utilities are another one of those bills that can feel like they're set in stone, but trust me, they're not. Little things like putting that plastic film over your windows in the winter can make a real dent in your heating bill. And here's a classic one. Finally ditching that super expensive cable package for a much cheaper streaming service can save you hundreds of dollars a year.
And then there's transportation. You know how it is. Gas, insurance, repairs, it all adds up so fast. So think about it. Could you bike or walk for some of those shorter trips? Is there a decent bus or train system nearby? And don't be afraid to talk to your boss. A lot of companies have rideshare programs, and maybe you could even work from home a day or two a week to cut down on commuting costs.
So, we've talked about a ton of stuff you can do on your own, but this next part is maybe the most important thing to remember. You are not in this alone. There are support systems out there that are designed to help people exactly in your situation.
I really want to emphasize this. There is absolutely zero shame in getting help that you qualify for. That's what these programs are for. They exist to be a safety net to help people get back on their feet. So it is so important to know what's available to you. So the source material points to four main types of government assistance you should know about. For instance, there's housing assistance to help with rent. There's nutrition assistance, sometimes called SNAP, to help buy groceries. You might also be able to get subsidies for healthcare or help paying your utility bills. This little table here really helps break it down. So if your rent is what's keeping you up at night, you'll want to look into housing aid. If the grocery bill is the big problem, nutrition assistance is designed for exactly that. Just knowing which program is for which expense can help you find the right kind of support so much faster.
You know, I love this quote from financial coach Jenna Rose Finney because it just sums everything up perfectly. This isn't about feeling guilty or ashamed. It's about building practical systems that actually work for your life. It's about feeling empowered because you have a clear, simple plan. Okay, so we've gone through a lot of information, but here's the most important takeaway. Please don't feel like you have to do all of this tomorrow. That's overwhelming. Just pick one. Seriously, just one thing. Looking at the screen now, what's the one small change from this explainer that you're going to commit to making this week? Because that is how real change starts.